Hello, welcome to part 2 of the academic research series. So, in this part, we are going to talk about how you can manage your research supervisor. So, in part 1, we have talked about how exactly are you going to choose your domain of interest for the research. And after you do that, your next job will be to find a research supervisor who has experience. Because research is something, if you are a newbie, you cannot really do it yourself, and you need funds, grants, and also other economic supports, right? So let's dive deep into it. So the first thing is, how do you even look for a suitable professor for your supervision? Like, what things do you want to look at before fixing someone as your research supervisor? So the first thing is you need to visit his Google Scholar profile. So let me actually show you what I mean. So in Google, you can write the name of the professor. Let me just type in my name. Okay, and you can search it like this, Chaudhary Rafid Rahman Google Scholar. And then you can just go inside here, and this will be the Google Scholar profile. And you can actually do it for any professor. So let me show you the Google Scholar profile for my professor, for my PhD supervisor. So this is my PhD supervisor. So this is how his profile looks like. So let me explain each and everything that you want to look at here. First of all, these are the topics he works on: cancer genomics, systems biology, computational biology, and bioinformatics. Right? That is the first thing that you want to take note of. So if you're interested in computational biology or bioinformatics or maybe cancer, then maybe you can actually knock him. And like, if you want to find the names of the professors, the easiest thing to do is just to go in the university website, right? So if you are targeting, say, MIT or maybe NUS, or maybe Stanford, I don't know. You can just go into that university website and you will find all the professors. And then you can just search their Google Scholar profiles up one by one. So then we have the citations. So he has like over 100K citations. So what this means is that different works, like over 100,000 works, actually cited his works. That means there are over 100,000 established research works which used this guy's work, which is actually huge, right? That is actually citations. So a lot of citations we can see here. Then there is the H index of 55. That means he has 55 works that actually obtained over 55 citations, right? So why does this matter? Sometimes what happens is a professor has a lot of citations, but those citations actually came from one single research or maybe two research works. And all the other research works, they are not that relevant in the field. But what this shows is that this professor's work is very significant because he has 55 works which have been cited or used by more than 55 researchers. And finally, we have the I-10 index. So what I-10 index means is that he has 88 research works which were cited at least 10 times. Okay, that is the thing. So you can also see what he is doing recently. So this is also important because some professors, maybe they did great work previously, but now they are not doing a lot of researches. Maybe they are mostly busy with administrative activities in the university. So actually, for his case, it is the opposite because I think since 2020, his citation counts, H index, I index, those things have gone up a lot more because you can see high numbers here. Okay. So finally, if you want to look at his recent work, so what are the works he is focusing on recently? Now, this is important because sometimes what happens is maybe a professor was working on something, maybe he was working on, I don't know, bioinformatics 5 years ago, but now he is no more focusing on bioinformatics. Maybe he is focusing on something else. Maybe he is more interested in natural language processing, right? So you can actually click on year right here. So now if you click on year, you can see that, these are his recent works. So you can look at his recent works and you can see, you can try to judge whether it matches your interest or not. Okay. That is how you can actually go through and navigate a professor's profile. And also there is the website. So different professors have websites, personal websites. For example, if I go to my supervisor's website, so you can see his email address and everything right here, contacts. And also you can actually navigate these portals to see if he is hiring people or not. So maybe he's not even interested in hiring new people, right? So you can actually navigate his profile accordingly. And also some professors will have his own lab. So you can also visit the lab website of those professors, which will also be helpful for you to take note of, like what he's doing. Okay, so as I mentioned, you can, after visiting the Google Scholar profile, you can see the topics he's working on, his recent research focus, his overall impact in the field, and if he has a lot of high impact research works and not just one or two, right? Okay, the next thing you want to do is visit his website and lab page, which I also mentioned, and I mean, see if he's actively looking for people to work on some research project, and also like if those projects align to your own interest, and explore the new works and the new people like who are working on that field. So the third point is I think this is something you also need to focus on, because in some labs there are a lot of overqualified people working as new researchers. So if you feel that you have a lot less qualification compared to the new people working in that lab, maybe you don't want to waste your time in applying for that lab. So that is something you also want to keep note of. Now, obviously, so far we have been seeing that you are looking for the professor, right? But the thing is, the professor is also looking for the student. So we have to understand what kind of students are the professors willing to supervise for research work, because then you will actually be able to make yourself worthy and make yourself qualified to actually fill up those research posts, those PhD positions, those maybe master's fellowship positions, right? So first of all, you need to maintain a strong GPA. A lot of students will not like this point, but this is true. Because if you have a strong and high GPA, grade point average, a good result in maybe your undergraduate studies, this actually indicates that the student will do something well, even if he loses interest. Because here is the thing. So a lot of the times when you go through the courseworks, some courseworks, they are not really interesting to you, and some projects are not interesting. But if you just ignore those, then you will not have a strong GPA. And also, I mean, many times during research, you will lose interest. And unless you have the determination to work forward anyway, I mean, you will not do very well in research. So strong GPA is an important indicator to how well the student will do in the long run. Then the project experience. So if you have some previous projects, then you will definitely have, because if you are doing undergrad in the courseworks, you are going to have some projects. So if those projects require innovation and teamwork, and they belong to the same domain as the domain of the professor himself, then that is going to be a big plus, I would say, for you. And sometimes if you don't have a very strong GPA, but you have a lot of relevant project experience, that also covers for a weaker GPA. Then you need some strong references. So you need some reference letters from 2 to 3 reputed professors for your institution, and that can make a huge difference. Now, I will talk more about this in later slide. Then you also need a strong personal statement, which actually shows your experiences and why you're interested in doing research with this professor. I will also talk about personal statement, I mean, later on in this video. So these two things I will talk about more, because I don't think they are that apparent for new researchers. So finally, the thing you need to remember is, for each research project, the professor has limited funds or grants which he previously applied for, and he will fund you and he will actually pay you with that fund or with that grant. So he will want to hire the best people he can with those grants to fulfill the research projects, to fulfill the demands of the funders. So next, we are going to see how you can approach a potential supervisor. So you have identified some people as your potential research supervisor. Now you need to approach them smartly. So obviously the first step is to write a clear and concise email. So this can make a huge difference. So let me explain how you can write a clear and concise email. So you need to start by mentioning the research domain in which you want to work with this professor, so that the professor understands right away what you actually want. Next, you need to write a short paragraph on your coursework and project experiences that are relevant to the domain this professor actually works in, so that he sort of understands how you can be valuable for him. Now, obviously, this second point already drives home the point why he wants to hire you, but still, it is good to mention explicitly how you can be helpful to his ongoing research projects. And finally, you need to write a short paragraph saying why you yourself are interested in this professor. That is important as well. Then you need to attach the personal statement document, attach 2 to 3 reference letters, and also attach your CV, mentioning your academic and extracurricular details. So the last point is, I think, very, very important to remember. Sometimes writing the first 4 points are texts, right? These are the texts, and these last 3 are the attachments. So the professor will not even look at your attachments unless he is impressed by the first 4 points. And remember that a famous professor will have a lot of students approaching him, and he has very limited time after doing all the works he's doing. So your email text should be readable within 1 minute. So after you write the email, just see if you can read it within 1 minute. If you cannot do it, then you need to rewrite the whole thing. So next, let's talk about the personal statement, which I promised that I would talk about. So this is actually, you can write it in maybe Word file or LaTeX or whatever you want. So this file will contain a few things. The first thing is it should be very personalized. I mean, you cannot just download a template and fill up things. That is a complete no-no. It should be personal. It should be based on personal experiences. You should describe your own experiences during your academic years, both successes and failures. And failures actually are good to write about because they show the reality. If you only write about successes, then it seems sort of artificial, right? Because humans both have successes and failures in their life. Then also mention the experiences which made you interested in choosing a research career, because everyone will not choose a research career, right? Because there are many other lucrative pathways, but why exactly did you choose a research career? And why exactly did you choose this research domain in which this professor is working on? So suppose you are done with your personal statement. It should be typically like 2 pages. I don't think you should make it more than 2 pages, 1 to 2 page. So reference letter, this will come from the professors. Now, obviously, during your undergraduate studies in college or university, you have encountered different courseworks, different professors. Now, those professors are the ones who will write a reference letter for you. So, first of all, this is ideally, I mean, it is not a must, by the way. It is not a must. I mean, ideally, the professor writing the letter should be reputed in the field. But if you don't have a lot of personal interaction with the reputed professor, don't worry. You can go for normal professors as well. But the most important thing is actually the second point. You should be well known to the professor writing a reference letter. The professor can be extremely reputed in the field, but unless you know him well, you should not ask for a reference letter for him. I will tell you why. So, the best reference letters are very personalized, where the professor mentions specific experiences and interactions with you during your academic years. Now, this best reference letter point will not be fulfilled unless you know the professor personally very well. Okay, so this is the most important criteria for a reference letter. So the letter should contain how you overcame your obstacles during your projects with the professor and how you showed resilience and teamwork during tough times. Again, which is part of a very personalized experience and interaction with the professor himself. And finally, the research intern or PhD student hiring committee are actually very well versed in these things. It is very easy for experienced research supervisors to differentiate between a formal versus a personalized reference letter. Let me actually explain why I say this, because most students who will actually apply for these positions will just go to the department head or maybe some reputed professor. They will request him to give him a reference letter, and they will just give him a reference letter which is very formal and very vanilla type. So, I mean, he probably gave the same reference letter to maybe thousands of other students. So there is no distinguishing factor there, right? And that is a formal reference letter. And if you provide a formal reference letter to the committee or the supervisor, it has zero value, zero. It has just zero value. Okay. But personalized reference letters are not that common because you will only get those if you do projects with that supervisor or the professor and you have encountered difficulties and you have overcome them by grinding under him, right? Okay, so that is all about the reference letter. So you need 2 to 3 reference letters from 2 to 3 different professors. Okay. Now, suppose you have already got yourself a nice professor who is supervising you, which is good for you. But now you need to build a good relationship with him. And how exactly do you do this? So first of all, you need to maintain regular weekly communication, giving him updates on the project. Now, this is something which many students don't do because sometimes research can be a lengthy process and they sort of keep doing things on their own at their comfort zone. But you will be surprised to see that if you regularly meet your professor, meet your supervisor and share the experiences or share the results with him, he is going to steer you to different paths. I mean, if you do things on your own, then those parts will not be explored, and the professor himself will be, okay, this student is doing okay, but he's not really meeting my expectations, because he couldn't actually convey expectations to you because you didn't have enough meeting. Okay. The next thing is you should not waste his time with things you yourself can explore by putting in some effort. Okay, so this is a problem with beginner research students or research guys, because they think that the supervisors will solve all his problems and teach him different topics, but it doesn't work that way. Unless you are extremely stuck and you cannot really get yourself out, maybe in a couple of weeks after trying a lot, you should then come to the professor for help. Otherwise, you should not do it because the professor is very busy. And then the third point is about procrastinating. So almost every researcher is procrastinating one time or another because it's a lengthy process. And sometimes if you are trying to publish in journals, there is no strict deadline. So I will talk about journal publication in my later videos. So you need to be responsible with your research progress and you need to stop procrastinating as soon as possible. So this point is about research ethics. So sometimes students are overexcited and they just submit a research paper on the things that they did under the supervisor, but you should not do it. You should definitely take his permission first, talk with him. If he is agreeing with you about the submission of the paper to some journal or conference, only then you should submit. So as a research student or a research employee, you can have different problems. It can be research problem, personal problem, and other things. You cannot expect him to automatically understand your problems. Okay, you need to explain to him what you are going through, and probably 9 out of 10 times he will try to help you with your problems. So if you do these things, I hope that you are going to build a very good relationship with your research supervisor. So that is all about today's video. If you like the video, feel free to share and subscribe to this channel, and also you can donate to this channel by going to the link in the description. In the description, you will also see the link for the next video. Okay, so see you in the next video. Thank you.